A phrase that has always stuck with me is that all marriages end in either death or divorce. Growing up, that idea scared me, and honestly, it still kind of does. I'm not married, but the certainty of loss still feels overwhelming to me. In life, no day is promised, and every bond, no matter how strong, will eventually break. We live alongside others for only a short amount of time, and we may never know when we'll have to say goodbye for good. When someone dies, it's a raw, unbearable kind of loss. Someone you love is suddenly gone. But life moves forward with cold indifference. Yet not all loss is necessarily final. Sometimes no one dies. Sometimes the end of friendship can cut just as deeply. The person you once laughed with, stayed up late talking to, shared your secrets with, that version of them is gone from your life. Their laugh is silent. Their presence no longer feels warm. And maybe what hurts the most about that is knowing that the distance between you wasn't inevitable, but it was something you helped create. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. After I stopped talking to a majority of my friends, I didn't know what to do but think about how people don't always just suddenly leave from our lives. Sometimes they just slowly fade, leaving us a distance that is hard to put a name to. It feels like grief even when no one has died. This is my attempt to sit with that silence and understand loss that doesn't come from death, but from distance. Not too long ago, I started playing The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa. As I started distancing myself from my old friends, I found myself strangely drawn to the game, perhaps because I was feeling lonely. Not in the obvious sense of the word. I still had people around me. I had people to talk to and spend time with. But still, there was a quiet tug inside me, a feeling that something or someone was missing. When I saw the name of the game, I kept going back to the one word, friends. I didn't know anything about this game, but something about it just felt comforting to me, like maybe the game could help me process how I was feeling. In the opening scene, Ringo and his 4 friends, Goro, Ken, Shiro, and Masaru, band together to fight their way toward becoming the strongest school in the area. For 10 straight minutes, they brawl through rival students, charging through a train and into a park. But it's not just about the fighting. You weren't watching a group of friends, you were with them. You picked each other up when someone fell. You pressed forward together. And right before the final showdown, there's this small moment. The 5 of them standing side by side, cracking jokes, making fun of each other, just being friends. It's nothing huge, but it hits. It feels real. And for a second, I forgot I had just started the game. I felt like I had known them all my life. After this, a year passes and we are met with Ringo's harsh reality. If he and his friends don't get it together, they won't be able to graduate. Each of his friends tackled this problem in a different way, and I decided to guide Ringo in my own way as well, by studying. I started the game by getting Ringo back on track, going to class, and trying to get his grades back up. During this time, I only saw Ringo's friends in passing and from the occasional cutscene. He spoke to them when he could, but there wasn't enough time for any substantial interactions. When the first week of the game ended and I got Ringo's grades, I realized I was sacrificing all of the relationships for perfection. And really, I felt like this mirrored my real life. I was working and studying nonstop. I couldn't find any time to spend with the people I cared about. Then, Ken got into a fight that changed everything. Fights weren't unusual for Ken, but this one was different. It ruined his future and maybe even his sense of self. Ken had spent the entire first week where I was studying at the gym training for a boxing tournament. He already couldn't compete in previous tournaments because of the fight at the start of the game, so this was his last shot to really prove himself. But then he was called out by a student who heard of what we had done in this intro sequence, and the fight ended with Ken breaking his hand. He wouldn't be able to box or compete in the same way ever again. I couldn't help but feel like I was at least in part to blame for bringing him into fights with me, and for not being able to do anything to stop the fight that ruined his future. In the following days of the game, Ringo expressed very similar sentiments that he should have done something, anything, to save his friend. But the reality is that he didn't, and there was nothing he could do anymore. In the second week, I intentionally spent more time with all of his friends. I couldn't let all of them get hurt and slip away just so Ringo could get straight A's. So, after school, I had him make his way to the rooftop and start to explore the city with everyone. Each day, we kind of did something different. They went out to eat, fought some rival schools, and one day even enjoyed the sunset at the pier. At one point, I even had Ringo skip and take Goro with to explore the further parts of the city. I was hopeful that Ken would return and hang out again in a few days, when he got cleared by the doctors. So I waited. There was a bittersweet hope that even if it was at Ken's expense, they would at least get to spend time together again. But even after 2 days had passed, Ken was still missing. I could see him in passing, but rarely had anything to talk about. He had always been Ringo's right-hand man, but now he didn't even seem up to doing anything or talking to anyone. My hopes that he would be around again were shattered. That uneasy hope that someone would come back around started to feel familiar. In my real life, I have texts I sent weeks and months ago still sitting unanswered. It's hard to sit with that, unsure of whether that distance is permanent or just temporary. Back in the game, I could feel that strain in the next few times Ringo got to talk with Ken. I could tell they tried to enjoy it, but Ken wasn't really the same anymore. When they talked alone, he was cold and didn't seem to care, but he was even worse to the people around them. And there was no way of knowing if or when this would end. One afternoon, Ken found Ringo after school and said he wanted to show him something cool. For the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. Maybe this was it, the moment things would start to be normal again. Maybe he wanted to hang out, just the two of them, like old times. When they got to the school, Ken sat Ringo down in the theater. I thought maybe Ken had started to enjoy plays, but then I noticed Goro up on stage. He had joined theater. I thought that was a really good change of pace for Goro, away from skipping class every day. However, Ken didn't really see it that way. Instead, he only made fun of Goro, saying he was only doing it for a girl, and how he'd never be good. Ken didn't want to show me something cool. He wanted to tear down Goro for trying something new. In the end, they almost started fighting, and Ringo told both of them to just go home. That scene really hit me hard. It reminded me of the times I was in Goro's position. All of the attempts I made to better myself just for it to be turned into a joke. It doesn't just hurt, it makes you feel like maybe they're right. Like your efforts were all a mistake. Like your interests are unimportant. On the day of the play a few weeks later, everyone but Ken showed up to support Goro. The worst part was that it was probably for the best that Ken didn't show up. It reminded me how fragile our friendships with others are, how friendships can slowly unravel until there's only a thin thread of connection left. A few days later, Goro and Ringo went out for a walk so he could talk about his new passion for theater. Goro talked about the next play and how he was studying the plot to prepare for his role. He seemed really excited for the first time in a while. But then they noticed Ken on the street. Not a single word was exchanged, but Goro had to leave. Ken was making out on the street with the girl that Goro liked. I wanted to give Ken the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he liked her too. But when Ringo brought it up to him, he was dismissive about Goro's feelings and clearly just used her to get at Goro again. After that, I knew things would probably never return to how they were. Ken and Goro's friendship was over, and every other friend seemed close to moving apart as well. This became even more evident when Ken returned to help when Shiro's girlfriend cheated on him. Shiro wanted to fight the people who his girlfriend had left him for. After the brief initial fight, we shared a moment that mirrored the beginning of the game. They sat around at their rooftop spot joking around, but it wasn't the same. Goro wasn't even there because of Ken. and Ken was hostile to everyone there. They all fought together to escape the school, and not even fighting felt the same. It felt hollow this time, and they all just went their separate ways when it was done. The rooftop spot stopped feeling like the haven Ringo could find his friends. It became empty. I used to have a figurative rooftop like this with my friends. We used to go to trivia every week together for 4 years, and slowly, everyone just stopped showing up the same as it became more and more hostile. That kind of slow end feels like trying to hold onto a rope as it slips through your hands and tears your skin off. And I could tell that Ringo was the only one truly trying to hold on. The next day at school, Ringo was talking to Shiro about what came next when the worst happened. Goro was put into a coma by the people who attacked the night before. I could feel Ringo's rage and scrambled to get Ken, Shiro, and Masaru ready to get revenge and protect their friend. However, when Ringo got to Ken's house, I realized none of them cared. Shiro made up with his girlfriend and didn't care about the fight anymore. Masaru needed to pay off his debt, and Ken had already burned the bridge with Goro. Ringo was left all alone. When the scheduled time to fight came, only Ringo showed up. He went on the train in silence and fought alone until the screen faded to black. As I watched the credits roll, I didn't feel like I had beaten a game. It felt hollow. Ringo had no friends left. He was alone. The title came on screen one final time, and the irony of it felt like a reminder of what he once had and how easily it all slipped away. The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa doesn't end with death. It ends with absence. When friendships end, there isn't always a singular defining moment when everything is over. But still, we only become acquaintances masquerading as friends. Watching the interactions between Ken and Ringo, and the fight between Goro and Ken, I found myself filling the silence between them with my own resentment, wanting to somehow break that silence and go back to how things were, to rewind time and undo everything bad that had happened. But unlike the game, there's no automatic dialogue prompt or easy way to resolve all of our problems. Going into Ringo Ishikawa, I wasn't really expecting to think about all the friendships I've had throughout my life. Not just the friendships that had a dramatic falling out, but also the ones that slowly faded without either of us noticing. The people I used to be close with, but now they feel like strangers. Just like in real life, the game offers no clear solution. There isn't always a moment where everything gets fixed. Right now, I'm just trying to reach out, to see if the connection is still there. And if it is, maybe someday it can be repaired. I never really found a way to solve or fill the silence, but I was able to find a way to understand it, to sit with it, and somehow that makes it more bearable.